It's made national headlines and been confirmed several times, but it is still pretty shocking. But Mike Rinder has died. Now, we knew Mike was sick for a while, and I will admit I am a little part of this, but I don't want to become egotistic. So this is mainly going to be, for the most part, a factual recounting, but we have to get a little bit into the larger context because, to put it mildly, his last few years were spent battling a lot of his alleged former friends, and that is there. We can't ignore that. But let us get to the main body and try to assess carefully who and what he is and what he left behind. So Render, like a lot of Scientologists, had his family already involved, and he was pulled in at a fairly young age and formally joined Scientology as, yes, a young adult, but he was indoctrinated from a very, very young age. And he rose through the ranks pretty high. He actually met L. Ron Hubbard personally and has a few personal anecdotes with him. But obviously, his most notorious tenure was as the head of OSA. OSA is hard to describe. It's basically up front, it's basically just PR. It just does public relations, media relations. But inside, it's well known as this kind of dirty tricks department, or essentially the equivalent of the CIA. It's not as lethal, but it is a very dangerous organization. And there's no doubt, because Rinder did admit to it, he's part of many, many awful operations against critics and even against former loyalists. The question is how far his culpability runs, and that we're still debating. But he never denied that he was behind many, many gruesome things that happened in Scientology. And I just want to do one big fact correct. A lot of people have put out in these videos, because they don't want to do any research, that Rinder never apologized to any of his victims. No, 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 he did. In fact, he apologized to several victims. Now, whether he needed to apologize to more people, yes, you can question. But he literally did apologize to a few people like Bob Minton, and he apologized to a few journalists that he victimized. So it's just not true that he never, quote, apologized. I don't know why people are saying that, but that's just not factually true. So after decades in Scientology, he eventually became disillusioned, and to put it mildly, like many Scientologists, when David Miscavige, and not just Miscavige, but a whole, quote, new group of people started to amass more and more power in Scientology, he became alienated and was even picked out for a lot of abuse himself. Probably the most notorious of these cases is the so-called trailer, which was covered in the documentary Going Clear, where basically Miscavige took a lot of these top executives and put them in these big containers and, well, no nice way of putting it, tortured them for weeks or sometimes even months at a time. And sometimes he did let them go and then put them back in. And it just became a cycle of terror and abuse. And eventually, Rinder was tired. Also, in his final videos, as well as a few final notes and letters he gave, he kind of explained, and again, you have to take his credibility for what it is, but I think his idea was this, that he thought the higher ups in Scientology were going to continue to go after him, but they were going to use his family. So, ironically, by leaving Scientology, he would become the target, and Miscavige would leave his family alone and or not really attack them directly. And as far as we know, that is what happened. A lot of his former family basically put out testimonies of him being a bad father, so on and so forth. But as far as we know, they have not actually suffered abuse. So whether this was a very clever strategy that did work, we don't know. Or did he just abandon his family? Again, we don't know. So he formally left in 2007, and as he admits, just tried to hide out, just wanted to move on. But in 2009, he helped with a certain article that was critical of Scientology. The Scientology people knew about it. They confronted him and said, well, we need you to denounce the article. We need you to stop doing anything against Scientology. And he made a momentous choice. And remember, at that time, Rinder was an independent Scientologist, a Scientologist outside the formal church, but pushing what's known as indie Scientology. But it's a big moment because it is a well-known fact, because he helped create this reality that if you do speak out against the church, they're going to go after you. But he made a decision in 2009 and forward to detail the church's abuses. Now, the obvious controversy is, has he been totally truthful and honest? And that we're going to be debating for a very long time. Certainly in some cases, he's not telling the whole truth. But you can't deny that he has done an enormous amount to give us more information on how OSA works, how Scientology works. And of course, you can't escape this, how these celebrities like Tom Cruise, John Travolta, the nuts and bolts of like, well, why are they in Scientology? How are they being coerced? Is there bribery? Is there blackmail? And he affirmed, yes, this is a very slick criminal organization. Some people are involuntarily, but a lot of it is coerced. So you can criticize his criticism for not going far enough, but there's no doubt we just do know a lot more about Scientology due to him. And for the most part, he has been a very visceral critic. A lot of people have accused him of still secretly being a Scientologist, but formally, a few years after independent Scientology, he said he's not a Scientologist, doesn't care about it, doesn't believe in it, and is just strictly a critic. Whether you believe him or not, you'll have to decide for yourself. Some people were accusing him in his last days of being a Hubbardist. It's like, okay, well, that is your choice. I don't detect any of that in his final videos whatsoever, but that is me. But obviously, the vast majority of people know him through the Aftermath program, and I will be blunt. I tried to give the Aftermath show a chance, but having done real research on Scientology, I have to be sad to inform people. It does give you a lot of details, and some of it is informative, but a lot of this is a superficial survey of Scientology. It still gives you a lot of good information, but it is misleading in parts. So it's a very kind of Hollywood version of how Scientology works. But again, good or bad, it did spread awareness of Scientology, some of its major victims, and again, more of the nuts and bolts of how the organization works. The Aftermath ran for several seasons. He and Lily, and again, people have challenged me on this, but that's her nickname. Yes, her nickname is Lily, and it's an affectionate name that Rinder calls her, and she likes. So Rinder and Lily put out the Aftermath and spread the good word. They won a few Emmys and became world famous. And then they did a podcast together called The Fair Game, where they invited a lot of guests to do more detailed analysis of Scientology. Lily has her own YouTube channel where Rinder was frequently on, and Rinder has his own channel. So if you want more of their work, you can go there. Now we arrive at the most controversial phase of his career, where with Lily's help, I don't think she was ever formally part of the organization, but Rinder, yes, Aaron, Smith-Levin, Claire Headley, and a few others, right? Aaron has made it seem that he helped by himself create the Aftermath Foundation. He didn't do that. So collectively, this group created the Aftermath Foundation. It's still technically a very small nonprofit. It has about $200,000 in assets, but if you know charities, that's fairly small. Nevertheless, it has helped a lot of people out of Scientology. But again, the criticism is the same with Rinder's media career, that it is helping a lot of people, but it's not helping a lot of other people, and so on and so forth. So for a few years, the Aftermath is running and seems to be doing good work. And then there's a major implosion and controversy with Aaron being forced off the board of the Aftermath. And I've already covered this in many videos. I'm not going to do that here because I'm going to concentrate on Rinder's passing. But we can't escape it either that Aaron basically declared war on Rinder, Claire Headley, and a few others, and clearly wanted revenge. And the last year and a half has just been a huge split among various channels, various personalities, and just activists of where they stood, whether they supported Aaron or they supported Rinder. I'm not going to go too much more into the controversy, but I will have to because Rinder's last several messages were focused on responding to Aaron and a lot of these charges that they made about the Aftermath and other controversies. Now, a lot of people were angry that he focused on Aaron in his last videos, and it's a very odd series because, again, he was just very sick. So his appearance shows a lot of decline, and he noted that, saying that he tried all the therapies, but he was clearly going to die very soon. But he wanted to clarify a few last issues. My own stance is, if a dying man wants to do videos how he wants to do the videos, I don't see what people are debating. You can respond, you can criticize, but why are you criticizing how he did the videos? It's like, those are his videos. So he did a few final testimonies clarifying a few issues. I just want to touch on one major issue. And as far as I know, Aaron has never provided counter evidence that it's not just that Aaron was being abusive or being toxic or being disrespectful. He was alleging that Aaron was being a criminal, that he was running several fundraisers. And again, we can't get out of discussing this because he did take the money, although Rinder did explain this. So one of the fundraisers was to benefit Rinder because he did go public with his cancer treatment. However, Rinder clarified he didn't ask Aaron to do that. Aaron just did that by himself. And to Rinder, he clearly did it to basically get leverage because they planned for Aaron to step off the board and gave him months and months, and Aaron kept delaying it. So to Rinder, the fundraiser was very cynical. And yes, he did take the money and he was very thankful, but he didn't ask for the fundraiser. And it seemed like Aaron was basically trying to coerce him. Rinder said also in another fundraiser that allegedly Aaron was raising money for the aftermath, but apparently he kept the money, which on YouTube, and as far as I know by criminal law, is illegal, and it does endanger basically the tax status of the Aftermath Foundation. So he is charging that basically Aaron was committing fraud. And as far as I know, Aaron has never responded to those charges. So I think to sum up, Mike Rinder's life has been a life of controversy. Whether you're on the quote positive side of that controversy, that he was a forceful critic, but selective, that's one interpretation, or he mainly was quote critical of Scientology to make himself famous and rich, that's another interpretation. I will just note his final wishes that he had a letter prepared when he died. It's been released by his wife. It's now widely available. And he just asked if you can and you have the resources to help his family and provide for the education of his children. So, to put it mildly, I'm very mixed on Rinder and his legacy, but I don't think you can deny what he contributed. So, it's a careful weighing of the good and the bad. I will just note that my own videos were fairly critical, and I don't have much to apologize except for two aspects. One is not really Rinder per se, but I think that I could have been more compassionate in terms of people in pain. I did in the videos always try to emphasize that he is sick and he is in pain, but I think I did it disrespectfully. So there I would try to correct myself that even if you don't like someone, you should always recognize, because we all do feel pain as human beings, that if someone is in extreme pain, they are in extreme pain. And some people really did deny that he was in any pain. Some people denied he had any cancer, and I thought that was a little too extreme. Another small correction is I was going with the information at the time, which unfortunately Aaron and a few others were putting out as facts, and naively I took as true. I'd have to correct myself on a few minor issues where clearly they were just speculating, and now it seems that they just didn't know what they were talking about. So I would have to correct a few of the videos, but I think overall my own stance is critical, but he is dead now, so we have to pick up the pieces and do what we can with his legacy. It's definitely a divisive legacy, but again, we'd have to be honest and say some of the divisiveness is not him, it's his alleged critics. And if you're a good, honest critic, I don't think there's a problem, but there were a lot of dishonest critics near the end of his life, and that is also true. We're doing a lot of videos exposing that fake criticism, and I'll have to do a few more, unfortunately. So, but we are where we are. Rest in peace, Mike Rinder.